Okay, it's recording. Now I'm gonna share my screen in the in here. So this is screen 2. Does everybody see my Maya screen?
Yep.
Yeah, it's up and running. Good, good. Okay. So, okay, so this is what we left last week. Last week we talked about in the last couple of weeks we've been talking about how to read the character. Um, this is only one aspect or one just a bypass. It is. One of the things that you have is that some of you have characters a little bit more complex than this, and that's why I'm asking you. It's very important to stay around, and then I'll help you out to figure out any issue that you might have. So I think we left it last week to this point, and just to recap what we did last week, we made sure that everything was in the right place. We talked about the in terms of the edit section here. We talked about how to make sure that I have that I have a good understanding of what these labels are, the IK label and the attributes. And I think I went through those specifically, so you can have a look and then go back to the class and then review that. But just one of the important things that we did, we created our own this chain of I think it's because it's not selected here. So we created this individual chain for the tail, for the ponytail here. So you can do that for anything. You can do that for your clothing. You can even do it for the cape. If you decide to animate a cape, that's fine. I am not going to animate the cape here. I'm going to create the cape and turn it into cloth in Unreal Engine 4. Guys, cloth as it is not going to be part of the submission, but I advise you follow up because it will make your character looks good and you learn from that. But in none of the briefs that you have to create a piece of cloth. That has to be something dynamic. But I think it's important that you are aware of how this is set up. It's very straightforward. It will take no time to set it up, this cape in there. The ponytail, I'm gonna, in this section I didn't animate it because there was no point. So what I did, I turned all this one into rigid bodies, and then I create a collision system that this ponytail will collide with the head automatically without having to animate. But it just needs an extra setup. So I advise you look into that and then do that for your character as well. I mean, some of your characters as well have like pads as well here, some sort of armor. You could essentially for that just create an extra joint that goes there and then bind that skin to that joint. Then that joint, when you bring it back in, you will turn into dynamic, so it will collide with something you put inside here, some sort of collision mesh inside here, the shoulder. So when the character runs, that sort of armor will flick around up and down as it go along with the momentum of the character, the energy of the character. So that is okay. You can do that as well. So we talked about that. We talked about how can you put an extra joint in the middle here by adding the label here, which is in between one of these joints. The same here, because we decided that there was not enough joints. And the good thing of that is that those joints are automatic. So if you want select here, you can see that when you rotate it, you can see that the stuff in the middle sort of goes around really nice and smooth. I did that for that. I did that for the neck as well. Look at the neck when the neck twists as well. You can see that the neck sort of bend as well here. Look, there's a little bit of a bend there. So that's automatic, and this is the FK system. This is the icons for the IK FK switch. When we get to the animation section, we will go through this rig, and then we get familiarized what each of the controls do. I think it's very important, so you can make use of those controls and then be animate more efficiently. But for now, what I wanted to say for now is that what we did last week, we rearranged this control because they were too small, they were going inside. The same with this one. I shaped this part here, which is this jaw. What I did was just took the points and then move them out to make it look like it's actually, so the animator know that this is actually the joy control. I took the eyes as well and I move them out, and then I just squeeze them down a little bit. But remember, you cannot do it on the transform level because you will actually be affecting the rigging. So what you have to do is select the actual curve and then use it by using the control vertex, and then make sure this one is unchecked, so when you select, doesn't select the joint, and you just move it whatever you want, and then you can mirror to the other side. Other thing that I wanted to show you before I move on, and I think it's quite interesting, is that the normal behavior for this, if you select this, it will always select the joint, has priority. If you want temporarily to do that, to disable that, just check here, and then you will, every time you select, you see you will always select the rest of the joints and the rest of the model or elements here in the outline, and nothing to do with it. You actually disabling the ability to select joints. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale this up, because at the moment, if you see here, they go through the skin and it's quite difficult for you as an animator to select them. So it would be good if we have them all outside. And in order to do that, we're going to scale them up. But I want to show you a nice nifty trick that you can do in order to scale them up, but individually, by selecting all of them in one go. So what you can do is you select all of them. I'm just going to deselect these two because I don't need those. And then what you have to do is just right click and then control vertex. Okay, and sometimes you have to go and do it individually like this. You have to hover on top of them, and then they will work. And you select the father of all of them. You see, if I select this one, you select anything that is under there here. See here, for example. You see, select everything. It automatically turns everything, whatever is child to it, because these guys in the hierarchy are child to this guy. So you select all of them, okay? So you just right click, you just select all of them, not right click, just select all of them. And then if you were to scale them like this, and I think the normal behavior would be this. So if you were to select all of them, then you would have this, which is something you don't want, because it will find the centroid of all this geometry, and then it will scale it from that point. And if you want to scale them individually from the centroid of each element, as they are here in the outliner, all you have to do is go into the scale, press R, click and hold, and then check this icon here that says, this entry says scale object center. When you do that, you will individually scale them like this. Okay, so this is a nice trick that you can do, so you don't have to lose the center, because if you scale like I said before, then they will scale and then move on. It will be quite difficult for you to select. So if you think that it's too big, then probably we can keep it like this. So Luis, after editing my model for the reference, I couldn't make the model go through. You had to tick this button that says T. Put in T. When you put in T, it's in template. Okay. So I'll look into that. Maria, once we're in the in individually feedback. Okay. So bear with me. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to go here, and then I'm gonna just select this because this one's quite big, and the area, so I'm just gonna make it bigger so you can actually select it easier there. And you can reshape it however you want, guys. So then just see, once you do that, it's always a good idea to put it back the way it was, so the behavior goes back to the way it should be. So again, because we did it on the right hand side, we can mirror it to the left hand side by just going into what is this section, control curves. And you're telling, hey, whatever is on the left, on this case, because the character is, we did an adjustment on the right, you say whatever was on the right, move it to the left. You keep an eye on this, it will automatically rescale, you can see. And now they are being mirrored, so you don't have to do it on both sides, okay? Now, so this is pretty much the last touch that I did before I continue. So one of the things that I wanted to move on to now is the actual skinning of the character. Now, the skinning of the character is a process that normally is one of the last processes that you do when you are rigging a character. So what you do is you assign the ability to the rig, or the joint in this case, okay? The joints will take control over the whole mesh. So what I do is this guy here will not longer be able to be moved using the transform node, because now they need to move in a way that as an amateur that is being rigged by this joint system, okay? So we are going to get rid of that ability to move everything in one go. We're going to move things on a per point basis, okay? And rigging is a very interesting topic, because a lot of people struggle to understand what's happening. And I think it happens to me when I learned the first time. I said, why am I chasing my tail all the time? Why am I painting and I'm always getting it wrong? It's always moving. I fix one thing and then I start moving the arm, and then the toes start moving, and then the neck start moving. So why is happening that? Now, the reason that happens is because we normally make a mistake, which is actually is a little bit of a contextual thing. Because if you think about it, if you want to if you by any chance you have an influence here that is by this joint, and then if you delete it, okay, Maya will always give 100% to everything, to every single point, okay? So and I think it's better if I exemplify that here, because I think it's quite tricky to understand it at the beginning. Now, the first thing we need to do is we need to give it a first pass to tell Maya, hey Maya, this is the rig, these are the joints that are going to be influencing the geometry, and this is how much influence that joints are going to have for every single one of the points, okay? And again, Maya does a first pass, which is based on proximity. For example, the points that are here closer to this joint will be controlled by this joint, and as the points move away and they get closer to this joint, then this joint will start having more control, okay? So it's going to be like a sort of a battle. Say, okay, this point is closer to the hip, then the hip is going to control it more. As this point is going to be around here, it's going to be, I don't know, it should be 100% or 70% controlled by this guy and 30% controlled by this. But you need to think about it when you move the knees. Does that it pulls out? Perhaps a little bit, but not much. So you need to paint that influence. Everything needs to be painted from 0 to 100%. And what I mean by painted is only a visual representation where you store information of influence of those joints on every single one of the vertex of the geometry by using something visually, which is called weight painting. Okay, and weight painting, what it is just you artistically assign an influence or a percentage of power on a joint over a specific point of the geometry based on its proximity to that joint. And this is a very clever system. But the first thing you need to do is you need to tell Maya, hey Maya, this joint, this geometry is no longer going to be able to be used moving this like that. It's going to be now locked, all this, and now every single one of the points are going to be controlled by this, by the main rig, which is all those joint hierarchy that the plugin already put together for us. Okay, so how do we do that? Okay, the first thing you need to do is select here. There is a you don't have to go and select them here like I used to. So now you can just go here into the form and tell them select the deform or deform joint. So you click here. It does some selection, and that what it does is selecting all the joints that are going to be used as an influence over the geometry. And then you shift select the geometry. Okay, so you got those two elements selected. Then you go into, you can do the stuffing as well here, but I like to do it here so you can have a look, see where the tools are. So you go here into skin, bind skin, go into the options, okay, and in the option you need to type this, you need to put this, you need to put in selected joints, so the joints that are being selected. The bind method, you need to put closest distance. It's the closest, the point closest to the joint. That's the one that have more influence. And that's it for now. This is very important. Skinning method, classic linear. This one is a more modern sort of deformer system. This one is not supported by Unreal Engine 4 or this one. This is the one that is supported. So you need to put in classic linear. Normalize weight, it will be interactive because everything has to go from 0 to 1. I will show later on what that means. And then here, weight distribution is based on the distance, okay? As the point travels or move away from that specific joint, it will start dropping the influence of that joint over that point. As the point gets closer to this, then this guy will have more control over this point that this joint has over this point. And that will be done for every single one of the points you have in the geometry. The maximum influence means that how many joints can influence a single point at one time. So you can leave this to 3 or 4, okay? So I think 3 works. You can always change that later on if you want, but at the end of the day, it will always be done by the painting that you do. So you leave it at 3 like that, and this should be fine. The rest is fine. The drop-off rate is how fast it goes from 100% to nothing, and this is just the power. When something goes the power of 2 or power of 1 or power of 4, the drop out is like a curve. It goes quickly from 100 and then 90 and then 40% and 10%. If it's 2, it will be like 70, 75, 80, 82, well, 60, 50, 40. This number is what this is the power, the number of the power of the transition. It's just the y is equal x to the power of this number, pretty much. So that will be the drop-off rate, how fast that goes from 100% to 0%. Okay, so the higher this number, the faster, the harsher the transition will be. From 100%, that will be 100%, 90%, and then 40, 10, and then 0. If it's 1%, will be like 90, 95, 92, 80, 80, 60, smoother, will be smoother. So just keep it at 4 because it doesn't make any difference, because at the end of the day, you're just gonna paint the weights yourself. This is just an initial pass. And you hit the button, bind skin, okay? And it seems like nothing happened, but when you select the geometry, the first thing that happens is this. It will lock this guy. You see, you have no anymore, you cannot move that character anymore because it's being locked. Now, you have the ability now to move the character, but now the character is being moved by the rig. See, the rig has now power over everything. Because now we have signed that every single one of these points has some sort of relationship with the closest joint to his surface. Okay? Now, if you look at this and you just switch it to IK, for example, and then we just move this guy, you can see that this guy it already gives you something, okay? Look, it gives you a very good starting point. But you can see over here that automatically the stuff that Maya gave me seems like it's good, but not really good in terms of deformation. Because you can see that this arm is taking too much influence over here. You see? You see it's influencing too much, and then it's obviously pretty much when you do that, you see that you lose a lot of volume here. So we need to fix that. Okay? And that is the interactive process called weight painting. Okay? And then the weight painting is pretty much information stored on every single one of the vertex. Okay? And that information is stored in the form or vertex color. Okay? So from 0 to 1, from black to white. And in this case, we have a nice visual representation in the viewport. That is a heat map, and I show you what that is. It's just another way. I prefer to use that as the black and white. Other thing that I want to say before I move on is that for this geometry, you have this locked, but at the same time you have this input, which is the history. Do not delete the history on this, or you are done. You will lose all the information. All that paint weight that we're going to be doing is stored in this node in the computer, okay? In that node inside the scene. So that information, that relationship, okay? Now, if I select the geometry and I right click, and there is a nice entry here called new one, because now it recognizes that it has a paint weight. It's called paint weight tool. You can just right click and hold and then move the cursor there, and then you can access it. Another way to access that, if you go into skin, and then here you go a section called paint weight weights. You control shift and click, then you can just put it here if you want to, but you can access it through here easily. Okay, and now everything goes black like that. Okay, and this is gonna show you here exactly what this tool does. So the tool setting pops out. It just came to on the other side of the screen. I'm going to check if it's recording. Yeah, everything is recording. That's fine. So what happened is that here in this list we will have what is called influences. Influences are called these little joints. You can see that those are the joints that we use. You can see here that we explain this color. By default is like this, which means that from 0 it has no influence, and from 1 or white would be 100% influence. At the moment you can see that the joint that I have selected is the one that goes a little bit light blue, and that will be everything that is that joint selected and all the children. And that is, if you analyze here, is the actual knee right. You can see the knee right saying, hey, this point has, I don't know if you can figure it out, but I would say that this guy here has 100% influence. And here, and it starts dropping off to nothing. And then when he gets to here, say, hey, here, this point here has no influence done by this knee. But it might have influence by the hip. If you select the hip, you can see now that this point is wider because it has more influence on this joint. You can see how the joint change color. It means that that is the joint that we have active at the moment. Okay? So now here, this is only a first pass that Maya does based on the settings that we did in the actual node. Now we need to have control with that because Maya doesn't understand the shape of the character, doesn't understand that you're trying to paint, I don't know, a snake or a bird or whatever. It's just a very good pass based on proximity, based on this point is closer to this guy, so this guy should have more influence over this point than rather the knee. Okay? And that drop off that I told you is how far this goes from 100 to nothing. Okay. And again, this is irrelevant because we're gonna have to repaint all that stuff. Now, the influence are the joints, and you can see here that they have a hierarchy. You can see which is the father, the children, all of them, and it goes for every single one of the joints that you have here. Okay. If by any chance some of the joints weren't added to this, you can add them later on. I can show you later on here how to add. There's a section here called edit influence. You can add an influence. Influence is a joint. Okay. So, but by default, like I was saying, the stuff that appears here is black and white like this, but I don't like this. I prefer to use this, which is a heat map. If you click here, called the color ramp, it's a nicer way to sort of visualize this. You have a different preset. You can use this one, which is like black body color map. You go the normal black and white ramp, and you go the color here, which is the heat map, which means that whatever works towards white, red is towards the 100%, and as it drops down to blue, it's gonna be 0.0%, and then 0 when it's no influence. So at the moment we have the joint, which is the root here, and it tells me that all these joints around here has some sort of influence. So if you read this map here saying this is 100% and this is not percent, you can see that this one is towards the red. So we're looking at this section here, that if you can figure it out, it's roughly about 90%, which means that the other 30% has to come from somewhere, and that has to come somewhere from the vicinity of the joints that are around. And that's when that number comes and say how many joints can you have. For example, this point here might only have influence from this joint and perhaps these two joints, not this joint, or maybe this joint and this, and then we have to paint that. It cannot be higher than 3 because we established that in the original one, in the original settings. And here you can see, if you go into the attribute editor for the skin cluster, you can change that here later on. Look, maximum influence, you can put it to 40 if you want, but I recommend not to do that. I think it's good if you check it out at the beginning and see if it works. If it doesn't, you can just go and rebind it again and then do it and then fix the issue. Anyway, so that is pretty much how this works. But now the thing is that you're gonna be always painting. You're gonna be painting stuff, and then for this you have a tool set designed to do that. Okay. And you have the ability to paint as well on a per vertex, but it's a bit more complicated. So I like just to use the simple stuff. So use the simple stuff that I'm gonna show you, and then later on you can actually explore and then be more creative. And then if you have issue, then I can help you out. But you can hear saying this one is a stamp. Okay, so this one will be a softer, harder square. This will be what you want to do. You want to add, you want to smooth, you want to scale, or you want to replace. And this is the opacity or the value. The value is how much percentage you want. This is not percent, this is 100%. So if I select, for example, just quickly here, if I select the root and I say I want to pay with this stamp, 100% influence, add to this point here, I just click on it and you see it goes white, because now this guy has 100%. Now if I say I want the one next to it to have no percent, I can just knock this down to 0 and then click on this here, and when it works, did I do that right? Yeah, because it's replaced with 0%. Okay, and you can see I can do that. Okay, now the way this appear like that is because you are painting on the vertex. Okay, if you're painting full vertex, then it will be fully black. Okay, but don't worry that for now because I need to explain other things. So let me undo this. Okay, so this tool set is the one you're going to be used for painting your weights. So the value is something you're going to be adding, normally adding, and then this one is a multiply. You can, if you put 50%, that will be then 0.06 instead of 0.12, which is this would be 0.12 would be 12%, and then if you put this to 0.5, that will be 6%. You're painting 6%, or you're adding, every time you click, you add 6% more, 6% more, and you can keep clicking until you get 100%. Okay. So, but we need to analyze how the character move as we go along, and then we decide how much we're gonna add and who's gonna have what. But before we do that, there is a very important concept that you need to understand how these influences work. Because if I select here, right click, and I put vertex, and I click on these 3 buttons. Okay, let's say I'm gonna click on these 3. I'm gonna click on this section here and this section here. So I selected all these points. Okay. So I'm going to analyze what is the influence that this joint has over this. Now we can see it visually, by using the right click and then going to paint weights, and then you can do that, and then, oh well, you can figure out it's about 80% or 90%. But there is a way to figure that out, or have a look how it works, because it's very interesting, it's very important as well to understand the concept of paint or weight painting, okay? Is everybody following this, guys? Everybody's following this? Nobody's gone, or?
More or less.
Yeah.
Everybody's following this. Okay, good. Okay, so so the next thing we need to do is, once you have this, is that you're going to say, okay, what do you need to do? How does it work? Okay, this is the way it works. Visually, we know that we have to go and paint those weights, but we need to understand what is happening in here. Okay, so I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna pre-select only a few there so you can have a look here. Probably this one, which is between this section here. I'm not gonna go that fast. Let's see. Okay, this three here, or this section here. If you go into Windows, we go into General Editors, and then you go here into this section called Component Editor. Okay. So this opens up my old screen, and you get, and I'm gonna open this. Okay, and then this is interesting because you can analyze what is that information that's being stored in here. And if you go here into this section called Smooth Skin, you can see that this is what happened. Okay, now look at this, because this is very interesting. Now we have all these points selected, and these are vertex, and these are the vertex number, vertex 60, 61, 62, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. That's a vertex that is being assigned by Maya how it is. But now this is the interesting part. This vertex has a percentage, okay, assigned by every single one of these guys, and all of them sum to 100%. Okay, obviously they're just being normalized to be from 0 to 1. Now this point, for example, in particular, has been influenced by 3 joints: by the elbow left, by the scapula left, and by the shoulder left. Now you need to decide if this arrangement works for you, because this here is, I don't know, 40%, 54%, 43%, and 0.02%. Now you need to think, well, does the elbow angle is going to affect this point? But not necessarily. So you need to go, when you paint it away, you paint to this guy 0. Say, no, I don't want this guy to be influenced but when I rotate the elbow. So you need to have a look at the character and then decide how are you going to approach this paint weighting technique, because or approach, how are you going to do it? Because like I said at the beginning, Maya will only do a first pass to the best of, I don't know, proximity. So it doesn't understand that that is an elbow. It doesn't understand that that is a shoulder. Doesn't understand any of that. Now, here, for example, if we select all the points, for example, these ones here. Oops, let me uncheck that. Again, let me right click here, vertex, and select this here. You can see that I selected more. Let's select a little bit bunch here. You can see that these points are being controlled by the middle finger, finger 1, 2, and 3. Then you need to decide which is the one that, obviously these numbers are higher, so it means that this guy, it has more influence over this guy. Okay, so over this point, because it's, when you bend the finger in that point, then all this is going to rotate with the finger. Okay, so the thing you need to take from here is that everything sums up to 100%. The fact that here appears 1 is because it's being normalized to be 0 to 1. But it's just 100%. This is just a percentage. Okay? So that's 95%. That is 0.4%. Or, yeah, or 4%, sorry. And this is 0.0022%. So roughly. So you know that you need to paint that influence. And that influence you need to affect it by the painting process. And that is what you need to do as an artist. Okay? So you need to do that for every single one of the meshes that you add to the rig. At the moment we only have this mesh, but you remember we're gonna have to add this, we're gonna have to add the eyes, we're gonna have to add the ponytail as well, and all that. Okay? Now, if a joint doesn't make sense when it comes to add it to this, for example the ponytail, I know that I added all this stuff to all these joints, I added them to this. But it doesn't make sense for me to have influence. Let me see if there's any influence in there. You can see, I don't want that to happen because the ponytail got nothing to do with the neck. So again, my idea, very good job, because this stuff was close to the neck than it is to this. So you need to go and tell Maya, hey man, you made a mistake here. How do I fix that? I say, well, this guy now is not going to influence anything on this point. I'm gonna paint it with 0, and I wanna paint everything, all those points closer to these two joints with an average, I don't know, 50%, 50%, or 60 and 40, depending on how the character is going to be moving. Okay, and this is pretty much what you have to do. This is the whole process of painting the weight. You have to do that interactively. Okay, and this is a pain in the ass, because a lot of people, and I used to do it, I used to just go and delete from one side, and then another arrow would come out, and that, the next start moving, the hair, the eyes, the jaw, the ears, it will be a nightmare. Okay, but there is a simple way to understand this in a way that you painted it, that you can actually make sense very quickly. Okay, and I'm gonna show you how to do that. Okay, now, does everybody want me to repeat anything or want me to discuss anything here to clarify?
No, I'm good.
Anybody, guys?
I'm good.
Okay, let's continue. So, okay, so, right, so how do we paint these weights? Okay, so let's do this. So I'm gonna take this guy, this is just for you to understand what's happening, and then we can go and review in a minute. You can have a look how we can change that. In fact, before we continue, what I can do is I can right click here again, paint weights. I'm gonna select this, oops, not that. I'm gonna, oops, not that, vertex. Vertex. I'm gonna select these two guys, and then here in how to go here into, let's say, Windows, component editor, and then here we can see that these guys are, these 2 points has influence from the chest, elbow, scapula, and shoulder. Now this, even this number is 0, guys, it means that not necessarily is 0, it might be 0.00005, and the number is too small that it's round out to 0. But if it appears here, it means that it has a residual of that. Okay, it's just very subtle, very small. Okay, so if I wanted to influence these 2 points, okay, so I can probably show you how I can make those guys disappear, all those entries here, and then just say, okay, I'm gonna make these 2 points only work with the right, the left shoulder. So what you can do is select this, right click, and then select the left shoulder, which is this one, and then I'm gonna paint them with this 100%. I think they were these 2, I think. There was at 100%. Yeah, I'm gonna go here and here. Okay, I painted 100%. Now when I select them, oh, I selected this one. Let's just select one. When I select that one, you can see now that that guy now has 100% by the shoulder. And this is what you have to do. This is the whole process of painting the weights. So, how do you do that here interactively in some way that is not that boring, doing it by numbers? You have to go and paint them. So the first thing you do is this. Let me show you how I paint weights so you can have a look. So normally when I paint the character like this, the first thing that I do is I start with the limbs, okay? Especially the horrible fingers, which is the one I take the longest. And then you will go into the things like the spine, the neck, all that stuff. But the limbs, I think, are one of the most most difficult to paint. And this is how you're gonna paint these weights. Now, before I do the paint weight, I want you to understand one thing. That this guy here, this joint here, okay, this guy, okay, when it rotates by the rig, no, you cannot rotate them like this, you have to rotate it using the rig, these controls. It will always bring this guy along, and this guy will bring along this guy, and then so forth, because these are children of this, okay? So, whatever happened from the hip down, for example, we have to have an influence all the way down there, okay? So, I'm gonna try to go as slow as I can so you can have a look and then paint the weights here. So, I'm gonna select the geometry, I'm gonna right click, paint weights tool, and I'm gonna go into here, into the left side. Now, the good thing about this, guys, is that you only have to do one side and then you can mirror to the other side if your character is symmetrical. If it's not symmetrical, you can still fix it, the majority of the work, and then you can later on do the rest of the work, okay? So, I don't like this to start with, okay? So for now, this is something that I normally don't do, which is painting the weights and on 0. Now, you might think, okay, this guy is affecting this area, which is fine, okay, that's fine. Maybe too high on the side, that's fine. And this section here is wrong because this is the right leg and this should be controlled by the right hip, not by the left hip. This is again because Maya did that based on proximity. That's the stuff that we did, okay? So how do we go about that? Now ideally you say, okay, that's easy, I'm just gonna paint this stuff to 0, okay, blah blah blah. I'm gonna go and do this. I'm gonna go replace, I put the value to 0 and then I do this and it works. Yeah, I'm doing that, okay? But under the hood, Maya has to add whatever you deleted, it has to add it to somebody else because every single point here has to go to 100%. It cannot be floating in the air. You need to have some sort of influence. Okay? So this seems to be like the right thing to do, but sometimes it bites you in the ass because Maya say, oh, okay, because you deleted this guy from here, I'm gonna give the influence to the right knee or the right hip or the spine. But sometimes, for some reason, you give it to the right finger or the left finger, and then you're gonna say, my goodness, I didn't fix it and now the finger is broken. So you go back to the finger and you do the same and then the leg breaks again. And you will be chasing your tail all day, you will not know what's happening. So what I normally do is I give it a first pass like this, which is 0. This is what I want, okay, because I'm gonna be mirroring. But then I don't do that afterwards because I don't think it's something that you should do, okay? Now, okay, I fixed that, which is deleting this. So that at the beginning works, that's fine, but don't try not to do it later on, okay? So, how do we do this? How do we get rid of this influence and then paint all the way down? Okay, so we do this. We take the hip here, okay? I'm gonna replace it with this brush, which is the hard brush. I'm gonna put everything to 100%. I'm gonna add or replace with 100%. Everything that goes from this section down, okay? So I'm gonna increase the brush by pressing B, click and drag, and I'm just gonna paint this. Look, I'm gonna paint everything white for now. You might think, well, the leg doesn't affect all the way down. No, it doesn't directly. Indirectly does it when it brings the knees and the ankle, but not directly, okay? So I'm gonna paint this to the best of your ability, guys. What you think is going to be the effect or this joint in there, okay? So because now this guy has 100% now. You see, it's painted all white. Try to use this brush, guy. If you use this one, you might not get 100%. This one is a hard edge brush, so it's easy to paint it in all the points. So you see, okay, this guy has 100%. Now let's see what happened with the knee, because remember the knee has, you check out the right knee, you see the right knee by default does this. But let's see what happened when I added this. Look what happened with the left knee. It went to 0. Because now that point, I said now this point temporarily, or the point around this area, now they're all being to control by the hip. Okay? Now look what happened when I move the hip, because I know that this control, when I move it up, it moves the hip, it moves everything. But look what happened when I move the hip. Look at this. Now this is incorrect, because now the hip is controlling all this stuff. Okay? Now this stuff is correct by, this geometry is correct by being lifted up like that, but it's incorrectly who is controlling it. Because I know that the hip is bringing the knee, and it's bringing the ankle, and it's bringing the toes, and it's bringing everything else. But then these things here have no control over the rig now. If you click here, right click, and say paint weight tool, and you go here into hip, again 100%, knee, nothing, ankle, look, nothing, toes, nothing. So we need to paint that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this guy back to 0, the control, and now I'm going to analyze this. So I'm going to right click here, and I'm going to give paint weights. So okay, this is sort of correct, But now the knees need to be, okay, the knees need to be now working from this area down. Okay. I normally don't do this, guys, like that, but I just wanted to know, to understand what, for you guys to understand what's going on. So when I'm doing this sort of like a lengthy process, so you can sort of understand what's happening there. Okay, so now look what happened. I added 100% from the knee down. Look what happened to the hip. It's gone. Now, okay, this guy has no control over this point, but it does have indirectly when he brings the knee up, because the knee is the child of the hip. But look what happened with the knee. Now look what happened with the ankle. Nothing, because the knee is controlling everything now. So we have to go back to the ankle. Look what happened when I move the control again. The knee bends properly. It's a bit hard here, and we're going to show you how to fix that. But look what happened to the toes. They so are controlled only by the movement of the knee, but nothing to do with this area. So we need to add and paint that influence there. Again, take this guy, right click, paint weights. Now we go into the ankle and say, well, the ankle should be working from here downward. Okay, let's paint it. Okay, let's see what happened now. Hip works, the knee works, and look at the toes, the actual ankle. It works. Okay, it's a little bit of a bending here. We're gonna fix that in a second. Don't worry. Look at this. It looks okay. Now, what happens if I want to rotate the toes? This is the control for the toe. We're gonna go through that when we are animating. Oh, this one. You see, nothing happened. This is which is the control that does the toes? I think it's this one. Yeah, look at this. When I rotate the toes, they got no influence in there because I haven't painted those weights there. It works for the hip, for the knee, for the ankle, but not for the toes. Again, if I select this, I can see the hips, okay, the knee, okay, the ankle, okay, the toes, I have nothing. So I had to add that. And again, that's what we talk about. This section here, it should have more loops. I didn't add them, but I'm going to ignore that because I fixed that on the other one, but I didn't have time to fix to actually change the model. So I'm gonna press B, reuse the stamp, and I'm just gonna paint. I think I'm gonna paint only this section, so it bends there, I suppose. Okay. Now let's see what happens when I rotate this. Is this one. Look, now it works. Look, so now I have the whole thing working. I have the knee, the hip, the toes, and everything working. If I select the toes, it does work, look. So it's all working now. Okay, so now when I right click on this, I can say, well, this is okay, ignore that for now. Left, okay. The knee, okay, ignore that. This should be 0. Let's replace it with 0 for now. Replace with 0. You see, for some reason, you see, once you start deleting, man, that's when it starts getting messy. This kind of stuff is because we're deleting. We shouldn't be doing that. But the first is okay. My experience tells me that when you do it the first time, it's okay. So I'm just gonna add 100% with this stamp. I'm gonna click here so I can have a more even distribution here and analyze. Everything seems okay. Okay, so now what you can do is to smooth them, and you can just go here into this. Oops, not that. And I think if you increase the brush size and then you go into the hip, remember the hip transition is too harsh. Let me see. You can take this guy, move it up. Look how hard this transition is. Let's move that out a little bit. By selecting the geometry, right click on it, paint weights, and then I need to have a transition that goes from white 100% to nothing. From white to nothing. It should have a little bit of green, orange, yellow, and green. Because it goes from white to green and yellow too quickly. That's why you get that harsh transition. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do something quickly. I'm gonna take the K and I'm gonna press H to hide it, so I can see easier here. Okay, and again I'm gonna do that. Again, let's have a look. We have selected the knee, and then look what happened to this geometry when I press. I think you press Shift and click, and you see how it's smooth. You're smoothing. Look. So when you smooth, the transition is softer. And you had to, let me undo this 1 second, I think I went too far. When you do this, you remember that you're sharing those points with this guy, so you need to smooth both. Okay? You need to smooth this, and you need to smooth this as well, at the same time. Okay? You can go inside here. See, once you start smoothing, things start being a little bit softer. See, now the transition is a little bit better, but you need to work more on that. So a little bit there, bit too much, root. When the root, for example, you say, well, this stuff is being pulled out too much by the hip, then you go into the root, which is the one that is above. You don't want to add it to the knee, you want to add it to the one above, which is the root. Then you go here, you change this to smooth, you give it a little bit of a percentage, you set add, and look what happens when you add it. It brings back this back in, and it just preserves the shape a little bit better. And again, you press shift and you start smoothing things out, and it gets a bit messy sometimes. And here, you see that's because we smooth out stuff too much. You have to smooth it always on both. That's okay for now, I think. That's okay. Press shift to smooth, not too much. Okay. And again, guys, it will. Other thing you have to think about as well is this will never be 100% moving like a human being, because it does the best it can. It got its limitations. But this is a process that's gonna take you some time. So you're gonna have to add. You see how if I keep adding, you see it's gonna go to 100%. That's not what we want. So we can probably smooth out a little bit until it looks a little bit better. Okay. Okay. So you got that. You can see now that this guy is looking a little bit better. Okay, the transition there. Look at the hip, how it moves, a little bit more organic. Now the transition on the knee is too harsh as well. Look at the knee, how it goes from all to nothing, because that needs to be smoothed out. So we select this, right click, skin weights, go back to the hip. We can smooth this here. I press shift, click. You can see. You see how everything gets a little bit smoother, because we're smoothing the transition. Okay, that's fine. Too much in there. Go into the knee. We do the same. You see what happens when I smooth it? It just preserves the volume much better. That's okay like that. A little bit, you see, a little bit transition there. Now you can see this is what happened when you start look at it. Look what happened with this and the knees, and look what happened with the ankle. Now this is wrong. The ankle is messing everything up here. So what you have to do when this happens is we can probably go here into replace and see if we can get away with this. So we replace this to 0. Look what happened. Everything, that is what is giving me that error. So when we do this, sometimes this fixes that issue. Okay. So now the ankle, the hip is okay. It's good. Not messed up. This is okay. It should be 0. So room, hip, review, looks good. Knee, good. Ankle, smooth it out a little bit here. So if you're finding that smoothing is sort of messing everything up, just use the add with a very soft brush and a very small percentage, and you can smooth things out a little bit by adding it a little bit, so you can smooth the transition like this, and then going to the knee and then smoothing things out a little bit like that. Let's go here into ankles here. Maybe this is. You can test it here by taking this guy, I think, and maybe rotating it like that. You can see. That's not bad. That's okay like that. Check out the toes. The toes is very harsh because I haven't got enough geometry there, so I might not smooth it because that will backfire because I don't have enough geometry in there. So if I smooth, I press shift and smooth, look, it messes everything up. So I might go and say add tiny touch here. You can see a tiny touch where the transition is not too harsh. Okay. Okay. So again, I take this guy and then I reset it, put it back to 0. Take this control, put it back to 0. Or yeah, I'll show you later on how to reset everything. So now you can analyze this, okay, and say, well, let's see how this looks. You can see, look at the knee, perfect. This is okay. The ankle is okay. Again, you're not gonna get 100% deformation. And you notice, guy, when you're playing game, you can see that something gets inside and it gets warped. It's because even though those go a lot of money, there's nothing you can do. There's always gonna be some problems. And I think I showed you in the first class with the God of War 4 video that there were some bits and pieces that they can do in order to avoid like volume loss and stuff like that. But that is a bit more complicated. That's more advanced. That needs programming. So that's nothing that we're going to be covering here. But this is just pretty much, this is a very good deformation. You can see the knee keeps in there. And this is when the loops play a good role. The deformation is nice and smooth if you play the loops in the right place. Okay? So you get that there, and then you can say, okay, fine, I got that. So I'm gonna put this back in here. Okay. And then you can start with the arm as well. So the arm at the moment is the same principle. You get this. You can see that the arm is affecting too much the chest. So what you do is you add the chest more influence than they have in the arm. But normally what I do the same here. I take this guy, paint weights, go back to the section here, which is scapula, which is this joint. I'm gonna ignore that for now. I'm gonna start working on this one onward. So again, I'll take shoulder, take this guy, 100%, add or replace. And then I'm gonna press B to increase the brush, and I do this. I'm gonna paint this, but I paint everything, including the fingers. Because all the fingers are gonna be painted later on by the joint that you select at that time. But at the moment, they're going to have some sort of influence, because at the end of the day, if you wanna put the fingers from one side to another, you cannot move them by themselves. They have to move with the arm, because they're children of the shoulder at the end of the day. Not directly, but as part of the hierarchy. So I'm gonna paint this like this for now, ignore the other bits. So you can see now that I lost the power of the elbow. You see the elbow is there, but I got nothing because I added everything to the shoulder. You see that's why it's 100%. Then this one for the deformation is nothing, the wrist got nothing, and none of these fingers will have anything. So what you do is, if you wanna move, look what happened. I move this, but look at that. Now it does, even though I think I forgot to paint a little bit. Look what happened here. This stuff here is because I forgot to paint it. So if you select this guy, paint weights, and then select the shoulder, you can see that I didn't paint it. When you paint it, look what happened when you paint it. It goes back to there because now they're 100%. So what I want to say is this guy here now, look at the elbow. It works, but it's not doing anything because all this stuff that you see here is moving based on the influence that is done by this guy. Okay? And you can see here now, if you right click here, say vertex, and then I'm gonna check this. And if I select the majority of these points and I go into Windows and I go into component editor, you can see that all these guys are 100%, look, by one single joint, the shoulder. Okay? So now then you have to go and fix this by taking, I'm gonna put this back to 0. And then you take, okay, I'm gonna start now with this guy again, but now I'm gonna go with the children, the first child of the shoulder. That's with the elbow. Then I take this with the harsh brush, 100%, replace, and I paint from this side onward. I paint everything with 100%. Temporarily, okay. It's not gonna be the final the final setting. It's gonna be only while we move stuff around. And then here you can say, well, this is gonna be, you can leave it like that, and then you can blend in these two because it's right in the middle. Okay, so now let's see what happens when I move it. The shoulder works, the elbow works, but the wrist doesn't work. Look, the wrist is bent like that with the fingers out, but the fingers keep going in the same direction because they're now controlled by this joint. Okay, now we need to go and do the same. So right click, paint weights. We added an extra joint, I remember, out of the formation joint, which you call elbow part 1, which is from down onward, and then you can just paint from this down. Again, it's a bit overdoing it, but I think it's good to understand what's happening. So I'm gonna paint now. Okay, all the way down there. Okay, so when I move them, seems like nothing happened, but that's because the joint is only for rotation. So look what happened when I rotate the wrist. You see? The wrist is designed to move this joint, not this joint. You cannot move, try to move your wrist from here, or you end up in the hospital. You will need it from the forearm. The forearm is the one that bends. So again, you select this guy, right click, control vertex. Now we are in this. Now we're going to the wrist. Again, we have a look here where everything is. I'm gonna reuse the brush, and I paint from this hand onward. Okay, and now you start getting like these bands happening between joints. Okay, and then you know what is the influence of every single one of the joints, what is happening. I need you to do this, guys, so you understand what's happening. Okay, so you can press a little bit too much, but that's fine. And again, when I rotate the joint, when I rotate this, yes, it does work, but look what happens when I rotate like this. Look, now the wrist is a bit harsh, but now it's there. And again, and then I start going all the way down. So right click here, paint weights, and look what happened. Look what happened with this. Let's have a look. You got this. Let's review this. So shoulder, look, it's like a band, nothing. Elbow, nothing. Part, nothing. But they are all interconnected because when you move the shoulder, it will bring these guys along because this is the children of this guy, of the shoulder. And that will all be set up by this control. Internally, there is a logic that does this shoulder thingy. Okay? And at the moment, if you want to do something with the hands, you cannot do anything. For example, spread. It does it in the joints, but there's nothing because you haven't painted anything to it. They all go 0. And that is the one that takes the longest to do, the fingers. And I think I need to admit in this geometry, it's not very good for doing the fingers because there's not enough look. But I left it like that because I fixed it in the one that I gave you last year with Holly. And that is fixing there. But for now, I don't have it here and I'm not gonna do it. So, you got this guy here, okay? And you go, where are we? I forgot. Okay, elbow, you can see. It's going like rings, look. Shoulder, a ring, a ring, a ring. And now this guy's got nothing, look. Because I haven't painted, so you start again. Index finger, why is it gonna be? Okay, the index finger is gonna paint all this stuff. So now just paint them all the way till here, I don't know. Okay, the way same here. Like that. Then you go to the other one, you see the other one goes 0. Now look at the wrist. The wrist lost control over this finger because now it's all painted to this guy, which at the same time is gonna come along because it's the children of the wrist. But it needs to have its own way of working, its own limb there. So we go here and I say, well, okay, now from roughly this line down is gonna be controlled by this guy. For the moment, I'm gonna press B. And it's gonna click here. Okay. Okay, so now let's have a look. Wrist, no hard control, nothing. This guy go a ring control there. Now this guy has everything. But you have to give it to this guy as well, which is the last one here. And then you have a look and say, well, this guy is gonna control all this. Okay, and now you can see elbow, there, elbow part 1, wrist, finger 1, finger 2, finger 3, and they all come along. So once you move in, they do move, but now they have their own way of working as well. Look, because I already painted there, that's fine. If I select these three controllers, shift select all these three controllers, I can make the finger crawl, look. Ouch. So, this is pretty much the principle, guys, that you have to do. And you have to do that for everything, for every single one of the bits. If you understand how this works, you can paint the whole character once you know how to do it very quickly. Okay, and that's pretty much what it is about painting weights. Now, when you have this, you don't have to paint the other side. You have to select the mesh, go back into skin, mirror skin weights. You put in the options. Now, this is quite temperamental, this setting. Sometimes some of them work, sometimes it doesn't. But what you have to do is find which is the mirror axis. The mirror axis is the axis that's cut in the middle, which is X, the Z and the Y. Imagine a plane cutting along from the middle, the character, like here in the middle. That will be the plane that is covered by the Y and the Z axis, the two-dimensional plane, temporary one. That will be this one, Y and Z. You tell them, I want to copy whatever's in the positive side to the negative side, which is true. This is the positive side of X, look, to the negative side of X. Now, this one, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You have to switch, trying to change this one. This one works for me sometimes, this. Close the join, and the second one close the join, and you apply. And when you hit this guy here, and you right click on this, you can see, for example, let's check out the hips. You see, you mirror them. Look. And it's done. All the stuff you did here is automatically mirroring this. That's why you have to work clean from the beginning. So let's see what happened with the arms. The right shoulder, the shoulder and the shoulder right, you see, it's all being mirrored. Okay, you just need to smooth this out before you mirror. You can mirror later on once you smooth out. So we can do that now. You just go into the shoulder and then start smoothing this stuff, smoothing this, and then see how it behaves. At the moment, it's too harsh. Look at the elbow, you see, it's too harsh here. Because it's going from 100% influence to nothing. So that needs to be smoother, and by that you need to either smooth it or add a little bit of influence between the both, and then have some sort of like a balance between them. So it's the best you can, the transition from going from one limb, from one joint to another. Okay, so and that's pretty much what it is, guys, in a nutshell. What is paint weights. So has everybody understood this, or everybody wants me to repeat some? Anybody want me to repeat something in particular, guys?
No, I understand.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay. So for those who are awake, okay, so I think I'm gonna stop the class now here, because I think this is enough for you guys to start painting the stuff. And then I wanna see you in the help room. And I'm gonna move there, guys. I'm not going to tell you anymore, and it's up to you if you want to come. But if you disappear like you normally do, go ahead. This is a free country. But at the end of the day, guys, it's your money, it's your investment. So it's up to you guys if you want to come and see me. I will be more than happy to see your work where you are and help you out. Okay? So anything else you want me to cover before we move on into the help room? Okay. So, okay guys, go into the help waiting room, and then I will move into the help room and I will start dragging you one by one so I can review your work and see where you are with your project, okay? Now I'm gonna stop the class now, the recording, and then I will upload this hopefully today or tomorrow. Okay, this is 1 hour class, and obviously this class will be longer, and class if you want me to repeat something, review your work, do as you go along, and then check it out, and then people can have a look at this and see how they progress. But obviously because of the situation that we are now, we cannot do that. So anyway, the knowledge is here, and this is where we are at the moment. Okay, guys, you should have your character done by now, guys. This is week 5 now, 5 or 6. Remember that the animation part, you need to have your character, otherwise you cannot use my character and then sort of copy and paste it there, it won't work. Okay, so I'm gonna stop the recording, and then I'll see you in the help room. Okay, all right, see you then. Bye bye guys.